Hey everyone, before we start off this new episode of the Domestique Cycling Podcast, I would like to invite you to the Domestique Social Ride. What is Domestique Social Ride? Well, it's a social ride that takes place on August 20th in Belgium. If you'd like to attend, you can find the pre-registration form in the description below. We will ride 80 kilometers around the stunning scenery of the Flemish Ardennes, the scenery of the Ronde van Vlaanderen. So if you want to be there, go fill in the form and we'll see you there. Now, enjoy this latest episode of the Domestique Cycling Podcast. Was UAE Emirates strong enough?
Yes.
Did the rest of the GC men disappoint you?
Yes.
Should Tadej Pogacar ride La Vuelta a España?
No.
Should Jumbo-Visma have allowed Van Hooijdonk to ride with Tadej Pogacar on the Champs Elysees?
Yes.
Should Jasper Philipsen have received a sanction for his behavior throughout this Tour de France?
Yes.
I've got the spots, the sickness. There's the twins in my brain.
The men's peloton has done their laps around the Champs Elysees. The jerseys have been awarded and the speeches have been given. We've been treated to 3 weeks of spectacle, from Bilbao to Paris, from Adam Yates to Jordi Meeus, from Jonas Vingegaard to Michael Morkov. Last week, I said it would come down to the wire. The 2 days after that, Jonas Vingegaard proved me wrong and put in some dominant performances as Tadej Pogacar cracked. Thank you, gentlemen, for an amazing race. Well, for the umpteenth time this year, we have an unprecedented cast for this week's Domestique Cycling Podcast. I am joined today by our data expert, Dieter. Hey, Dieter, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've had a very long day with 2 stages, one of the Tour de France Femmes and the regular Tour de France. So a long day of cycling today.
It weren't the most exciting stages either, so tough day.
No, that's true. It did make it a very long day, but let's dive right into it. Last episode, we reviewed until the second rest day. So we start off today with the time trial, which I'm sure you have some thoughts about.
Yeah, Jonas did an amazing performance, but I'm just going to start with talking about the obvious, I think. Something that I don't like to talk about, but something that needs to be talked about, I think, and that's how much people, even team leaders, are accusing Jonas of doping, solely based on the fact that he rides amazingly fast. I think that's the most crap reason ever. They are always referring to, but Lance also said that he wasn't guilty and he was guilty, but that doesn't mean that Jonas is guilty because he says he's not guilty. Because what does he need to say when he's really not guilty? He's also going to say that he's not guilty. So I think Jumbo was preparing this TT since January, just literally right after when the course was known. He trained specifically on staying in the crazy TT position on a 6% gradient. His corners were out of this world. Like this, Tom Dumoulin said in Sposa, this is the best time trial I've ever seen. And Tom Dumoulin has seen quite a lot of time trials, and he has done quite a lot of crazy time trials. And then the watts, Nijaka first calculated 7.6 watts per kilo for 30 minutes. That would be very crazy. So a lot of people thought that's sus. But a couple of days later, Nijaka said that he apparently had the wrong time on the climb. So it wasn't 7.6 watts per kilo, but 7.4. That's more doable.
I think that's still crazy, right?
Yeah, it's still crazy. But if Jonas, if your conclusion is that Jonas doped because he did 7.4 for 30 minutes, then Pogacar is also doping because in the Tourmalet stage they did crazy power. In Puy de Dôme stage, Pogacar almost did the same power after and that was on the last 15 minutes of the climb. So they had been climbing for 20 minutes before that. So I just want to say, accusing someone of doping solely because he's riding fast doesn't work like that. Jumbo preparated this time trial into perfection. Everything was perfect, and that's the last thing I think we have to say about doping in today's podcast.
Yeah, I would also prefer not to talk about it any further. I think those allegations are completely unfounded. Some other stuff. I heard some news that some of Jumbo-Visma's rider, and I think it was Wout van Aert and Jonas Vingegaard, used a chest cup to make themselves more aerodynamic. I don't know if you've heard about that. How big of an impact do you think that makes?
You would say that things like that don't do anything, but at those mind-blowing speeds that the time trialists are riding, like 55, 60 kilometers per hour on the flat, that does a lot. I know that if you have a belly, you are more aero. I already knew that. But yeah, it's not. The weight of a belly doesn't outweighs the benefits of being aero. So yeah, you can't grow a belly to be faster, sadly. But yeah, doing it like that with something that weighs barely anything, it's very smart, and I think it could do quite a lot of. It could be a big advantage if you see how much of a benefit removing cables from a TT bike, for example, has. They think it can be pretty big.
Yeah, it's one of those examples of a technical or a scientific advantage that Jumbo-Visma is putting into their TTs and in the rest of their racing. They often say that they invest a lot in science, and like this sort of stuff sort of really visibly shows like, okay, that's kind of an out there idea that you don't see any of the other teams do. I think from now on, we'll probably see some of the other teams try and copy that. And yet it's not a very difficult thing to try and copy.
Yeah, they are working together with Bert Blokke. He's like a aerodynamics specialist. Very smart guy. It's insane all the things he can work out. Like how much you benefit from the draft from a motorcycle, from a car. Very interesting Twitter account. Definitely someone to follow. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I did see that he also was talking about the amount of bikes that you have on the car behind you and how much of a forward draft that causes. There was a bit of a difference there between Pogacar and Vingegaard, where Pogacar had 2 bikes on the car behind him and Vingegaard had something like 7. I believe there were some new rules from the UCI about the amount of bikes you can have on a car. I think that was actually limited to 2. So it's a little bit odd to see Jumbo still put that many bikes on their cars. I think that was something that was forbidden.
Yeah, that's a rule I think that's in the waiting room for 2024.
It's not approved yet.
There was a new rule for the distance. A car has to ride behind the time trialist. It went from 10 meters to 25 meters, I think. But the rule about the maximum amount of bikes is for next year, I thought.
So it is still a little bit of maybe a tactical error from UAE to not maximize that advantage while they still could. All right. Yeah. Of course, I don't think I have anything left about the time trial. Obviously, Jonas put in a lot of time into Tadej Pogacar here with honestly mind-blowing afterwards. I think I wanted to do a podcast, but everyone else was like, there's nothing to talk about. It's just mind-blowing. What can you say about this? And we just talked about it for about 10 minutes. So so let's move on to stage 17, the Queen stage, with the Col de la Loze, which was highly anticipated. This stage was won by Felix Gall, but I'm sure it will be mainly remembered as a stage where Tadej Pogacar cracked for forever. How do you think that happened?
One of my friends on Twitter, Bazarda, spotted in the week 2, I think, that Pogacar has like a cold sore. I think it's called like koolsblaasje on his lip, and that's a sign of or sickness or that you are very exhausted. And yeah, I think that was a sign that Pogacar really suffered a lot, and that he was really exhausted, and that he just blew his doors on Col de la Loze, the Queen stage. I also heard that he had some stomach issues, so he couldn't his food. He couldn't take up that sucks a lot, because you need a lot of food in a like 5-hour mountain stage, I think. 4 hours 49 for Felix Gall. They did like, that's I think 5,000, 6,000 kilojoules. If you can't process your food, you're done. As easy it is.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you predicted before the tour that Jonas Vingegaard would crack Tadej Pogacar here. But I can't imagine you expected it to happen to this level, or am I wrong in that?
No, you're right. Chaka, who I also mentioned earlier, did his watts per kilos calculations, and I think Vingegaard did 6.3 for 35 minutes or something, and Pogacar did only 5. Like, he had to extend his graph because Pogacar wasn't on the graph because his performance was so bad. That's not what we are used to from Pogacar. So it was just beneath Pogacar's level by a mile.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think he's finished something like 22nd on the Queen stage of Tour de France. You definitely expect Pogacar to be first 2 or top 5 at least, all the way down there. Definitely don't expect him. It is the second year in a row where Jumbo appears to be able to crack Pogacar in a very severe way. Not just maybe a minute, maybe 2, but like multiple minutes in one stage. What do you think that is, and will it work next year as well?
I think Jonas just handle an extreme amount of volume, and that's why he's always so good in the end of week 2 and week 3 of a Grand Tour. Like, I think I saw the most tired Vingegaard ever on the steep climb after the descent of Col de la Loze. He was dropped by Bilbao and he even got 25 seconds on Jonas on a section from 400 meters. That's the only time I saw Jonas Vingegaard tired, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe he just didn't want to blow himself up there. It didn't matter to go and chase Bilbao. Of course, if he could have, he probably would. But I think it was just it doesn't really matter. Yeah, let me just get to the line. I don't care about this place. So yeah, I think this stage was also the one with quite a few incidents with the fans and with motorbikes. I hammered on it last week on the pod as well. ASO has to, that's the tour organizer, of course. They have to fix this, right? They have to limit the amount of motorbikes and also have to fix something about the fans, or maybe fans' mentality just has to change. What do you think they can do?
Fences on a mountain stage like that, but also it was on the Col de la Loze stage, I think, with the motorbikes in the car, right? That was Col de la Loze. Belgian commentator José de Cauwer talks a lot about motorbikes and how there are a lot motorbikes just way too much. And some say that he's whining about it, but nothing happens about it. So he needs to keep whining because nothing happens, and he's fully right. So just make a difference with the motorbikes and put fences on the mountain stages, and voila, that's it.
Yeah, I do think that one of the race organizers, Govenu, has said something about that they would look at it for next year. But you have every TV station now has a reporter on a bike that adds, I don't know, 15 bikes to the whole caravan, and all of them want to constantly overtake the peloton or want to be near the breakaway because they want to be able to report real news. And then of course you have the massive amount of photographers. They're nice to have. They provide us with great pictures that we can use on our thumbnails, for example. But in the end, there might need to be fewer of those. When it comes to fencing off, I do think it's very difficult to fence off an 18-kilometer climb. I think at that point, what they do in Spain with the Guardia Civil is just every 50 meters they have a police officer. And if there is someone that starts running, that police officer will say, "Hey, come here," and basically pull them aside. I think maybe some resources there could be invested.
Yesterday I saw a motorbike, an officer on a motorbike, I think, and everyone who ran out of the line, he gave them a big push right back in the crowds. That's how it should be, to be honest, because you're playing with riders who prepare this race for 6 months. But also I want to say it's not the motorbikes are always the ones blamed, but it's the race director, to be honest, who needs to be blamed, because that's the one who says what the motorbikes should do and need to do, and the motorbikes just listen to his orders or her orders. So yeah,
I think on Vive le Velo there was someone with a lot of motorbike experience that was saying this exact thing, where there is someone regulating all this and they're clearly kind of failing at it. But all right, maybe enough about motorbikes and crazy fans. It's definitely something we just want to see fixed next year. So if you're listening, please fix it. On to stage 18 and 19. I'm going to sort of combine these two because they're kind of similar. They're wild breakaway stages. But let's start with 18, which was won by Kasper Asgreen ahead of Eenkhoorn and Abrahamsen. Am I right in saying Kampenaerts was the real MVP of this stage, though?
Completely right.
The moment where he dropped back, I think it was with still 60Ks to go or something like that, to wait for Eenkhoorn, who had attacked from the bunch in 2 different times. We'll get to that later, how that happened. And then just TT'd him back, and just the amount of effort that Kampenaerts put into that break to get it to the line. And I think the only reason why it got to the line was Kampenaerts.
Yeah. I think someone, Hannes from Domestique, said that he didn't understand the pull by Kampenaerts, that Kampenaerts should have attacked, but I don't think the break would have made it to the end then, because if Kampenaerts attacked, Asgreen is going to react. The tempo is out of the break, and they will get caught. So I think Kampenaerts did the perfect thing. They tried, but Eenkhoorn didn't win the sprint. Pity, but yeah, they also could have won. You don't know that before, so I don't think they. I think they did it perfectly. Yeah,
I agree. Eenkhoorn was the guy with the freshest legs in that break. He'd been in there for only about 60Ks, so obviously he's going to have the best chances at winning that sprint. Of course, you hit a Kasper Asgreen who wins monuments, or at least is 1-1. So you're up against a stronger guy. I don't think that's something to be ashamed about. I don't think Kampenaerts would have won that with an attack. You know him kind of well, or at least you know him a little bit already. Where does he find the energy in the 3rd week of a Grand Tour to be able to pull out these achievements?
He does everything perfectly. Food, everything, training, it's perfection with Kampenaerts. So his position on the bike, that saves him a lot of energy. Believe me, a lot of energy at those speeds. They are constantly riding at 50 kilometers per hour or more. Like if you sit behind Kampenaerts, like Abrahamsen or Kampenaerts, Abrahamsen or Asgreen, if they are riding behind Kampenaerts, they are almost putting this out the same power as Kampenaerts is, while he's riding at the front. So that saves you so much energy. Also, I sent Kampenaerts a message during the tour to ask him to do a pod, like we did in the Giro with Derek G and Arne Maret, and he said we'll do it after the tour. Gotta stay focused right now. I think that says everything. Is not he doesn't do anything else when he's in the tour. He only focuses on the racing. That's an amazing mentality.
Yeah, I definitely think he's one of those like true professionals who, if he's there, he's there. Obviously, we'd love to have him on the pod, maybe this week, but we'll see how that goes.
And one thing about Kampenaerts, when he was riding at Jumbo, he was already training polarized. Jumbo wasn't doing that at the moment, but now they are. So like Kampenaerts on its own was innovating better than Jumbo-Visma. That says so much about the person Kampenaerts is. That's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to the amount of energy that he spends, for example, in the classics, there I had a lot of questions about it. But the way he's handled this Tour de France, I think this is the best Kampenaerts we've ever seen. I think he's also said that himself. I'm very impressed with his level. And I'm very much looking forward to having him on the pod.
Definitely.
Stage 18 was also a stage where we had that controversial moment between Eenkhoorn and Jasper Philipsen. What are your thoughts on that?
I think first Eenkhoorn goes on the right, attacks on the right through the grass and almost hits a van. And by dodging the van, he touches Søren Kragh Andersen, who has to maneuver a bit because of that. I think Philipsen was a bit mad about that. I think caused this reaction. But yeah, Eenkhoorn needed to attack through the grass because Alpecin and some other teams were blocking the front, so he couldn't pass them. So that's their own fault, to be honest, that Eenkhoorn needed to attack like that. And then Philipsen sprints after Eenkhoorn. He literally blocks him. He's like, Eenkhoorn is here. Philipsen is riding into the fence like that. That's blocking. That's in the like the regulations of the UCI.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of rules about that. He even could have gotten DQ'd because it's not the first time he did something wrong this tour, and he literally got no punishment. And I don't say he had to be DQ'd, but like 50 points in the green jersey and 1,000 Swiss francs, or how do you say it in English, something like that, but no punishment. That's crazy.
Yeah, of course, the UCI regulations have sort of predetermined brackets for what a punishment can be. The UCI commissaires at the Tour de France can't just make a different punishment. They have to follow what the rule book says. And there were two options, either three options really. They could completely ignore it, which is what they chose to do, which I think is completely wild. Then there is the fine of 500 francs and a deduction of points, or KOM points, but I'm guessing it would be sprint points here, or it would be a disqualification, basically get thrown out of the race. Obviously, nobody wants the last part to happen unless you're a real Jasper Philipsen hater, which I'm guessing this tour generated some. With some of his behavior. But the fact that they went with zero punishment for a guy who's riding with a significant green jersey, where I put out a tweet afterwards saying, like, it's like the sponsor Skoda, are they okay with this type of behavior with a rider who rides around with their logo? I imagine not. I hope that Jasper Philipsen sort of calms down a little bit after this. Of course, he's had the nickname Jasper Disaster, so I think this is sort of in line with that, where he sometimes makes decisions that he really shouldn't be making. Maybe Netflix will touch upon it as well. But yeah, I think that's all for that stage.
Knowing the Tour, it could well be that if Philipsen wasn't in the green jersey, that he did get a punishment, because like the jersey wearers in the Tour are like saints for the organization. But also, I don't really get Philipsen. He seems like such a good guy off the bike, such a friendly guy. But when he's on the bike, he's a killer, it seems.
Yeah, so, I think he's just very short-tempered that way, where he sees what he wants, he takes it. Like, he's just very impulsive that way. I don't know how he is off the bike, obviously, but I do think there's like a impulse management problem there. I do think he has ADHD. I think that was said in the Netflix series.
Oh, okay.
So that might have something to do with it. He has difficulty focusing on stuff. But yeah, definitely something that the team has to work on if they want to have Jasper get fans, which I think is a problem right now. Stage 19 is the stage that was won by Tadej Mohoric. A very emotional stage, a very hard stage as well. I think it took over 100 kilometers for a break to form. It was completely wild. We again had a very strong move by Kampenaerts, who for the second day in a row was given the Combativity Award. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this stage?
Like the outcome was amazing. Most beautiful interview I've ever seen. I literally had tears in my eyes. It was beautiful, and yeah, like also a lot of factors in the interview. The Forgino factor, but also that Mohoric talked about how tough the life of a cyclist is, which is very underrated, I think. It was just such a beautiful interview. It was near perfection, and it really got to me.
Yeah, I think for anyone who hasn't heard that interview yet, go check it out. You can find it on YouTube, on Twitter, or wherever. It's an amazing interview. Just for someone who's not talking in their native language, the way that Tadej Mohoric put the life of a cyclist into words, I have heard nothing like it. Even from pro bike riders in like an interview like that, especially straight after the line, you've won like 2 or 3 minutes ago, and then you make a speech like that. Some people can spend months writing such a speech and not nail it, but he just did it off the cuff. I was very impressed with that.
It's poetry.
Yeah,
literally.
Exactly.
And then the picture from I don't know how to pronounce it, but fe.tte. That's Gino gave Mohoric a push to the line. Also, just beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. That was I tweeted that as well. It hit me right in the feels. It's one of those I don't want to spend too much words on it, because it definitely gets you emotional. And just that entire day, from the moment that Mohoric won, I think everyone is just like it's a very emotional day with everyone wanted him to win that one, and of course with Gino being a factor as well. It was great. I do want to talk a little bit about the racing action in that stage. We had Jasper Philipsen and Mathieu van der Poel in a chasing group behind the three that ended up sprinting for the win. So that was Mohoric, Asgreen, and O'Connor. Behind that, you had a group with Philipsen, Pedersen, Laporte, Mezgec, Bettiol, Trentin, Pidcock, Zimmerman, and Van der Poel. How is it that very strong group with a duo, so you have a Philipsen Van der Poel duo, how do they not get back onto the wheel of of those three leaders, and actually like they come back like 39 seconds.
It's always like in a big group like that, you have attacks like so they go harder than the first group for like minutes, but then the tempo goes away and they go a bit slower. It's like a start-stop situation. And I think also the three in front were crazily strong. They were cooperating very well together. Like Kasper Asgreen is maybe back in the form of his E3 Tour of Flanders winning year. Attacking the day before, going completely all out. The day after, like he's the one that separated the group on Côte d'Ivoire, I think it was called.
Yep.
Only Mohoric and Ben O'Connor could follow or were smart enough to follow, because if Asgreen goes, you need to follow. If you have any brains and any legs, you go behind him. The three pulled very hard. They got to the stage. They got to the finish line. Asgreen did an amazingly strong sprint again. But Mohoric was perfectly in the draft. He let Asgreen close the gap. And to be honest, Kasper won the sprints. Mohoric won the jump. If Asgreen jumped like Mohoric, Asgreen would have won. So, yeah.
Definitely. What I was sort of alluding to is that you have a duo of teammates, both of them obviously very strong, with Van der Poel and Philipsen. Why does one of them just not completely sacrifice their chances for the other and actually try and close that? Because both of them could have won that closing sprint. If now Philipsen wins a sprint for fourth, and Van der Poel is the last in that group. If they had to choose and say, okay, this is one for Jasper or this is one for Mathieu, why does the other one just not bomb it on the front and like do everything they can to close that gap?
I think Van der Poel also really wasn't that good. Like he was still on antibiotics, I think. He had to skip quite a few turns because he was just fully a block. I think if Van der Poel could, he definitely would have. Yeah, it's obviously that they would have chosen Philips for stage win. But I think Van der Poel just didn't have it in him, to be honest. It's already a crazy performance to do that, to get in the breakaway if you are on antibiotics, to be honest.
Yeah, that's also crazy where, like, if he's that busted, if he's that dead, how is he in that group still? Exactly. He did have Philipsen going to a couple of riders like Pedersen, like asking them to do harder pulls, which I think is kind of crazy. You're the green jersey, you're asking other sprinters to do harder pulls while you're probably kind of soft stepping and letting your teammate do the hardest pulls. So I thought it was tactically a little odd. All right. Then we have stage 20, or do you want to say something else about stage 19?
I want to say in a situation like that, having a sprint is not always an advantage because no one wants to ride with you. Like in classics, Wout van Aert has a problem a lot of times. So yeah, that's cycling tactics can be really rough.
I think Jasper will find that out in the coming years. All right, we have stage 20, the penultimate stage, the last real stage, let's call it that, with a finish on the Markstein. Here we have the renaissance of Tadej Pogacar, who wins the stage in front of Felix Gall and Jonas Vingegaard. There is one crucial moment, I think, in the stage. Pogacar attacks to obviously they want to go for the stage win from the very start of the stage. UAE is pacing, Jumbo is also pacing to keep the breakaway in close distance. Then the last climb, Pogacar attacks with like 4 or 5 kilometers away from the summit. Obviously very far, but they need to catch the break, which they do. And Vingegaard follows, and then Pogacar asks, "Come on, do a pull," and Vingegaard just says no. This is a moment where I do not understand Jonas Vingegaard, and he has 7.5 minutes lead in the general classification on Tadej Pogacar. can you explain to me why he doesn't pull with Tadej Pogacar? Because whether or not he pulls, Tadej Pogacar is going to beat him in the sprint anyway.
True. I think that man was stressed out to his limits. He was so stressed the whole stage, like all the time looking like that. Where's Pogacar? Where's Pogacar? Like, I think he had nightmares about dropping a chain and losing 7 minutes or something. He was so stressed. Yeah, I think he had only one thought, getting to Pogacar's wheel and don't let him go. He seemed so stressed out. Yeah, I think if he himself looks back at it, that he thinks, yeah, I could have easily taken a few pulls and getting to the line with Pogacar, but he was just so focused on winning the Tour. And it sounds bizarre if you have a 7-minute lead, but I think the guy was so stressed out.
Yeah, it seemed a bit of a mental problem where he didn't quite trust it.
Yeah.
I personally don't think he'd ever lose 7.5 minutes on that stage at all. Definitely not with how he looked throughout that stage. He looked very strong. But it's one of those stages where I think Jumbo has to be a bit aware of like how cycling fans can react to someone who is basically using in football, you have something called anti-football, where you just park the bus for your defense if you're in the lead. I think this is something called anti-cycling, where, okay, you have a significant lead and you go full on defense. Of course, that's a very valid tactic. It wins your races, but it's not going to win you hearts. If Jumbo wants to keep dominating this Tour de France and they come back every year with a similar tactic, we're going to start seeing fan behavior from in the Sky days. And I'm kind of scared about that.
Yeah, the most crazy part for me was that Jonas then tried to win the stage and just with so much risk fully dive bombed Adam Yates. That was such a risky move there. To be honest, he could have lost his Tour. You with like 50, 60 kilometers an hour, you crash into the fence and you break something and your Tour is over. So that risk he does take, but he doesn't take the risk of pulling. Was very strange. And like, yeah, the thing you say about Sky, also with all the doping accusations. Now I do talk about it one more time. Sorry for that. But like, I think next year we are going to have situations like with Froome, that someone is running around dressed like sabutamol, or how is it called, like that's inhaler.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. I would love to see him attack more, but of course, he's just riding to win the Tour.
Yep.
Okay. Let's actually do stage 21 of the men's race first. I thought I was going to do the women's race first, but let's wrap up the men's race in a tight little bow. Obviously, the first half of the stage is completely skippable. It's the stage of Paris.
One thing happens. Kampenaer's attack right from the gun. Amazing. He was just laughing in the whole peloton's face. I think Jumbo-Visma really thought, fuck, our champagne moment. That's amazing.
It was a little bit like, because Kampenaer is a little bit of a weird figure in the peloton. If there is one rider who would actually do it and completely forget about tradition and full send it all the way to Paris, he'd be one of those guys. And I think, let's just say if he did that, Jumbo-Visma would be a little bit upset with him. But then again, it's a race. Everyone can race.
True.
But yeah, I think he quickly opened up like a 55 seconds lead and then basically had to squeeze his brakes for the riders to catch him. Yeah, there was quite a few breakaway attempts, of course, on Champs Elysees as usual. And as usual, they don't get to the line. It's been since 2005 that one made it to the line with Vinokurov. Do you expect that it can actually happen in modern cycling still?
I chose Kampenaer's for today. So I thought like the only teams that should ride for the sprinters were Jaco Alula and Alps and Phoenix. But like at one moment, even Israel Premier Tech started riding for Corbin Stroll. Like the man weighs 62 kilos. Good luck with winning on the Champs Elysees, mate. Like, yeah. So that puts Alpes and Phoenix in a very nice position. They only had to pull like for the last kilometer. I thought everyone was going to attack out of outside of Jake Alula and Alpes and Phoenix, but that didn't happen. A lot of guys chose their sprinter who was never going to win, to be honest. So yeah, the attack didn't happen. I think that happens every year. Like every year, I have hope that an attacker makes it. But every year, like some teams start to ride for their sprinter who has no chance of winning. I think like sometimes I think you have such a strong man in that team who could maybe do a successful attack, and they choose for no disrespect to Corbett Strong, very good rider. I have him in my dark horse threat pre-Tour de France, so I fade him in, but he's not going to win on Champs Elysees with like 62 kilos. So just attack.
No, he ended up being ninth. So you're completely right. One of the attacks, of course, was one of Tadej Pogacar. Absolutely mental. He's done this the second year in a row now. He clearly just wants to have fun on the Champs Elysees as well. I don't personally think he believes that he can make it to the line, but he's going for it. He's just making fans by doing this. It's attacking cycling, it's attractive cycling. Of course, in his first move, he just gets Van Hooijdonk on his wheel, where we have a little bit of a sad moment where the Jumbo-Visma team doesn't allow Van Hooijdonk to pull. I personally think that's a real shame. They're not going to ride for the win, but at least let them have some fun. Let them race.
Exactly. Let them play. Why not? Like, and even if they get to the line, they would probably get to the line with like a 5 seconds advantage, or like it's at when they enter the last lap that the time counts. Like they're not going to have more than half a minute lead. So just let Nathan play along. Nathan has a pretty good kick since he joined Jumbo. I think by training on that a lot more, maybe he even takes the stage win on Champs Elysees. Like just let him ride. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that since last year, Jumbo doesn't care about winning on Champs Elysees anymore. Because last year as well, they didn't let or Wout van Aert didn't want to sprint on Champs Elysees, and they just preferred doing the team picture behind the peloton. So maybe Van Hooijdonk just wanted to be on that picture instead of potentially winning the stage. Because they also didn't sprint with Laporte today. I feel like that's also a real shame. He's one of those riders. Strong rider, can handle the cobbles pretty well. He had a chance today. Completely thrown away.
If you see,
go ahead.
If you see the guy who wins the stage, I think he's in a way like he's not that good as Laporte in classics, but like they're a similar profile. Like they get stronger in a sprint race if the stage is tougher. And Champs Elysees today was a real high pace. I didn't look at the watts yet. I definitely will do that. Maybe make an analysis, because I think people underrate so hard how tough it is to ride on the Champs Elysees. Like you suffer really hard in the peloton. Riders always say that. I think, who was it? Some GC man said last year that it was the hardest stage he has done in the Tour. Yeah, like
definitely. Of course, if people want to find out how hard it is to ride on Champs Elysees, they can try it on Zwift. I do think there's a course for it, and you can definitely feel like that road is not flat when you ride up towards the Arc de Triomphe. Yeah, we have Jordi Meeus winning on the Champs Elysees. I think a lot of people sort of expected a Belgian victory, but they didn't expect this Belgian victory. Obviously, you're a big fan of Meeus. You've been hyping him up all the time since he got selected instead of Bennett. So yeah, let's talk about him. Like, he's obviously sort of the dark horse of all the sprinters here. How did he do it today?
Yeah, he is the guy he's not just your regular sprinter. He's a guy who can handle big volume. I think he did a top 10 in Roubaix or like top 15. So he's like really strong. So like end of the second week or the third week when all the sprinters are dead, he isn't. So like the older guys sprints are dropping off, and Meeus sprints stays at the same level, so he gets better in comparison to other sprinters. He just rode better watts than Philipsen today, to be honest. If you saw them sprint, like Meeus is definitely not an arrow in a sprint, and he sprinted faster than Philipsen. And like a lot of critics on Meeus going to the Tour by a lot of people on Twitter. I interfered with a lot of them. Meeus never got the prime lead-out from Bora. Bennett always had the perfect Mullen van Poppel lead-out to always deliver in the perfect position. Sam Bennett didn't take one victory, I think, this year.
I think he won
second in San Juan, I think. One stage in San Juan, yeah, that's nothing. Like I think the best lead out in the world, I can say, the Bora lead out, and you only win a stage in San Juan. Yeah, I hope now Meeus gets. Yeah, he now only had Van Poppel, but Van Poppel didn't seem to be in a good shape. He didn't do one perfect lead out like he always does for Bennett, it seems. Like I hope now Bora give him a chance to do some more races and some more of the highest level races with the prime lead out from Bora, and they are going to have a lot more victories than if they do it with Sam Bennett.
Yeah, today as well. I don't think we saw a really great lead out from Van Poppel. I don't think there was one. Maybe just dropped him off where he needed to be.
Yeah.
If Van Poppel is the best lead out in the world, personally, I think that that goes to Van der Poel. But he's also the most expensive lead out in the world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just end up the men's race by giving a shout out to the jersey winners as well, because of course we have Giulio Ciccone, who won the KOM jersey. We haven't talked about him a lot in this pod. I think when it comes to Lidl-Trek, they really made this a whole team effort to win that KOM jersey. The way that I think it was Skelmose and even Pedersen were doing lead out trains for Ciccone on, was it like stage 20? It was absolutely insane.
Yeah, even Wawa Barguil, he loved to see Ciccone taking the stage when he did like on, I don't know what climb it was, but somewhere in the middle of the 20th stage. He tapped him on the butt like, go mate, go enjoy your moment, and Ciccone just full on celebrated on the line from the KOM sprint. It was, yeah, that's amazing to see.
Of course, that was the climb that secured his jersey. So obviously he was right to be happy there. But yeah, I think also kudos to Hannes for predicting a Ciccone KOM win. And let's actually take the opportunity to announce who won Domestique picks. It was Yves, who with 5 points. Let's say that 5 points on a maximum of 24. It's not great. That means all the rest of us did worse. All the rest of us got 4 points. But hey, congratulations to Yves.
Congrats.
We'll do Domestique picks for the Tour de France Femme and for the Vuelta as well, but we'll look at changing up the format a little bit for the Vuelta. We also had the first stage of the Tour de France Femme. We'll try and keep it short because the stage itself wasn't that interesting, except for the final 15 kilometers. What an attack and what a win from Lotte Kopecky.
Yeah, it really reminded me, like, it seemed like she had the same power as Wout van Aert did in the Calais stage last year. Was a similar profile. I think the stage Kopecky one was a bit more tough maybe. But yeah, amazing attacks. Like, she extended her gap pretty easily, it seemed. I thought, she was just amazing. Like, nobody was even close to following her on the hill. And the peloton was super small, and she attacked out of that. So yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that was sort of my surprise as well. I think the peloton was about 25 riders at that point when she attacked, and nobody even tried following her. She just rode off and just like complete uncontested. It was Demi Vollering setting the pace at that point, and of course she just completely dropped off the pace from the moment that she saw that Kopecky was going. And after that, I think the only person who paced really was Ashley Moolman-Pasio. But then in her wheel was a very smart Demi Vollering to sort of block the attack from moving forward, or from the attack being chased. So I think overall, SD Works, an amazing team performance again, with Wiebes coming back after being dropped and sprinting to second place. The amount of 1-2s they've had this season, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Like, to survive a stage like today, it's a crazy performance for Wiebes. She was, and like, Cole was dropped for a second, she got back and ended third, but Wiebes wasn't dropped. I think she survived in that 20-woman group.
She was dropped for a little bit. There was a group of 9 riders. She was a group of around 10 riders back. She was there with Cole, and I think the other from there was another team that brought them back. I think it was Canyon, and of course the team, like the group where Vollering was in, just wasn't really chasing that hard, so they were able to come back.
I thought Wiebes stayed in that big group and that only Cole was dropped, so they were both in that group.
Yeah, they were dropped together. They stayed with each other.
Also very strong by Cole, to be honest. I got some criticism on my pick today on Twitter that I picked Cole, that she could never win it. But like, if you end third, that's more than decent.
Yeah, definitely. She definitely surprised me with how well she stayed on the climb. With Wiebes, we kind of knew that her climbing got a little bit better with her performances in the classics as well, doing all the domestique work in those, and then still sprinting to second place sometimes. So it was a little bit surprising to see Cole up there as well. But of course, she's still young. She's still getting better. All right.
She even outclimbed her GC teammate Juliette Labou.
She did? I didn't even see that.
I was at a race, a women race, Omloop der Kempen this year, which Cole won, and I was admiring Cole's sprint with a friend of mine, and Cole's parents were standing next to us, it appears, and we had a little talk with them, and they said to me that Cole was going to beat Wiebes this Tour de France. So yeah, I'm very curious to see that happen.
You can't have a better source of information than that, that's for sure. All right, looking forward a little bit. We'll do potentially a pod with Victor Campenaerts later this week, depending on his availability. And otherwise, we're back next week to review the Tour de France Femme in its completion. I do want to have a little bit of a word for our Twitter audience. During Tour de France, it blew up. We recently got to 30,000 followers on Twitter. I want to thank all of them for following. It made our Tour de France really special. And even before that, it's been an amazing Tour de France. And with Tour de France wrong, it's not over yet. All right. Well, that's a wrap for today's Domestique Cycling podcast. A big thank you to our audience for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, consider supporting us on Ko-Fi or Twitter. And if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
I've got the spores, the sickness. There's the twins in my brain.